Old racing games tend to get into a tough spot when it comes to retrospectives. First, there's a lot of them. And that makes sense. Racing is a popular subject for a video game, but it does mean that only the best of the best get remembered. Or I guess the worst of the worst in some cases. Generically competent racing game that was fine for when it was released isn't something that a lot of people are going to care about decades later. Second, when it comes to this era of racing games, the technology can be pretty harsh on them. Getting something smooth and fast to run on 8-bit hardware is not a trivial task. What I'm saying here is, Irem's Racing Damashii is fine, but it also doesn't give you a reason to play it over any one of 24 other games. When you start up Racing Damashii, you get 3 modes to choose from: GP Japan, Endurance, and Test Run. Test Run will just let you drive any of the tracks, and GP Japan is the heart of the game. You play out a season of motorcycle racing. There are 2 difficulty levels, Novice Class and A Class, and I wound up playing on Novice Class so that I could ease myself into it. For all of the modes, you can modify your motorcycle. You can change the tires, the brakes, and the gearing, and that's it. The frame is changed based on the racing team that you choose. Every racing team consists of a driver, an owner, a mechanic, and a woman. I don't know why they gave them all different portraits, since they don't seem to do anything in the game. One of those racing teams is Irem, and so naturally I had to pick them. Turns out, in the early 90s, Irem actually had a motorcycle racing team, but they only lasted a season or 2 and seemed to have been pretty bad. The picture on the cover of Racing Damashii has their racing stripes, but none of the logos on the motorcycle. For any of the competition modes, you first have to complete 2 laps, and that determines your position in the starting grid. You can't fail to qualify though, even if you go really slow. On the track, you'll immediately notice that the screen is split in half, so even when you're qualifying and only competing against yourself, there's another player on the track with you. Naturally, there's a 2-player mode where the other person's controlling the bike on the bottom screen. Racing goes exactly how you'd expect. Button 1 accelerates, button 2 brakes. Some bikes have a turbo where you can press up while you're running and they'll get a bit of extra acceleration. The motorcycles can interfere with each other on the track, but not crash into each other. Instead, you'll skid a bit if you get hit. Of course, that's an easy way to wind up crashing into something on the side of the road. The GP races have a set number of laps, and depending on your driving, you'll get some wear on the motorcycle, the tires, or you might start running out of gas. To deal with this, when you see the sign flashing pit on screen, hit the select button, and you'll automatically go into a very long pit animation. Once you reach your crew, you can tell them to only work on certain things or fix everything. Then you get back on the track. In novice mode, you probably won't have to pull off. Where it's really going to become a factor is the endurance races. Racing Damashii is the official racing game of the Suzuka 8-hour endurance race. This is a competition that's exactly what you'd expect it to be from the title. People race around the course at Suzuka on motorcycles for 8 straight hours. They're allowed to switch drivers at pit stops. The endurance mode in Racing Damashii lets you pick how long your race will be. You can go for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, or 8 hours. So you can do the full 8 hours on the Suzuka course if you really want to. Of course, if your vehicle takes too much damage as you're racing, then you'll be forced to retire, and that's one of the big challenges in those endurance races. How few pit stops do you really need? For the standard GP mode, depending on how well you do in the race, you'll get a number of points, and whoever has the most points at the end of the season wins. After every race, progress is saved to the Tenno Koei 2 memory bank, but there's no other way to save your progress. There is no password here, so if you don't have that peripheral, then you have to play the entire season in one sitting. One weird quirk of Racing Damashii is that after you finish a race, you still have to wait for everyone else on the track to finish. And if you're way out in the lead, like I am here, then you're going to have to wait quite a while for everyone to finish. Considering it's just AI opponents in this case, it probably would have been better to use their current positions as their finish order. The PC Engine version of Racing Damashii is actually the second release in the series. The first was a Game Boy version that was released a few months ahead of it. I've seen people refer to the PC Engine version as a port of that Game Boy game, but I think there's enough differences here that they're really two different takes on the same concept. The few Japanese players that I found who had anything to say about Racing Damashii didn't seem to be especially fond of it. There was one particular problem that kept coming up regarding the game, which I haven't mentioned yet, and it's a pretty big one. The handling in Racing Damashii feels off. You could slow your bike down to a near stop, though you actually can't stop in this game. And even at slow speeds, you'll find that you're being pushed hard to the outside of curves. As a result, it's really easy to go off-road when you hit a corner. The solution is to drive racing lines. Get into position, slow down, and start turning before the corner, and expect to come out of that corner wide. It works, and the fact that I was getting first place after I got a feel for the game proves that, but it's not intuitive. And I think that's what keeps Racing Damashii down in the it's fine category, instead of finding its audience. Racing Damashii winds up being an average racing game for 1991 that happens to have an interesting mode and not the best feeling controls. That's the way it goes sometimes.